Imagine living in a world where a single word of refusal could destroy your entire life. A world where power did not ask for obedience, it demanded it. Where doors could be broken open in the middle of the night, accusations required no proof, and people disappeared into distant camps without knowing if they would ever return. Now imagine something even more unsettling. A quiet house, a calm face, an ordinary life on the surface. But behind that door, hidden beneath years of suffering, humiliation, and silence, a storm was waiting, one that would eventually claim 37 lives without a single step being taken outside. The Gulag system was one of the most feared instruments of repression in the Soviet Union during the 20th century. It was not simply a group of prisons, it was an enormous network of forced labor camps spread across remote and often brutally cold regions, such as Siberia and the far north. Millions of people passed through these camps over several decades. The official purpose was to punish criminals and enemies of the state, but in practice the definition of enemy was extremely broad. People could be sent to the camps for political dissent, accusations of disloyalty, fabricated charges, or sometimes even personal conflicts with powerful officials. A refusal to cooperate with authority, a careless remark, or being associated with someone under suspicion could be enough to trigger arrest. Life in these camps was harsh and exhausting. Prisoners were forced to work long hours in dangerous industries such as mining, logging, and construction. Many of the projects were massive state efforts intended to expand infrastructure or exploit natural resources, and the labor of prisoners became a cheap and expendable workforce. Workers often lacked proper clothing, food, and medical care. The extreme climate made conditions even worse. Winters were freezing, and summers could be brutally difficult. Survival depended not only on physical endurance, but also on the ability to navigate a harsh camp hierarchy among prisoners and guards. The psychological impact of the Gulag system was as severe as the physical suffering. Isolation, constant surveillance, and the fear of punishment created an atmosphere where hope was difficult to maintain. Prisoners were often cut off from their families and had little idea when or if they would ever return home. Letters were censored, and communication with the outside world was limited. Many prisoners struggled with despair and trauma that lasted long after their release. Even those who survived and returned to society often carried the weight of suspicion because former prisoners were frequently treated as politically unreliable or dangerous. The system served as a powerful tool of intimidation for the wider population, reminding people that resistance or refusal could lead to disappearance into a distant camp where survival itself became uncertain. In an environment where political power was concentrated in the hands of a few individuals, authority could easily become a tool for personal motives. When systems lack transparency, accountability, and independent oversight, those in powerful positions may begin to blur the line between official duty and personal desire. In such conditions, the machinery of the state, police forces, legal institutions, prisons, and labor camps can be manipulated not only to protect national interests, but also to settle personal grudges, silence critics, or eliminate individuals who refuse to comply. This transformation of public power into a private weapon creates a dangerous atmosphere where ordinary citizens live under constant uncertainty, never fully knowing whether a command from above is truly about law and order or about the personal will of someone with influence. Within highly centralized political systems, accusations could be extremely difficult to challenge. If a powerful official chose to target someone, the process often moved quickly and quietly. Investigations might be secretive, evidence could be weak or fabricated, and the accused person might not have the opportunity to defend themselves properly. Once the accusation entered the official system, it could trigger a chain reaction: arrest, interrogation, sentencing, and exile or imprisonment. Because the institutions involved were part of the same power structure, there were few opportunities to appeal or correct an unjust decision. This imbalance created a situation where refusing a demand from a powerful figure could be interpreted as disobedience or disloyalty to the state itself. Such misuse of authority also had a broader effect on society. People learned to be cautious in their interactions, careful with their words, and extremely wary of anyone with influence. Fear became a form of social control, encouraging obedience even when orders were unreasonable or unjust. Many individuals chose silence over confrontation simply because the risk of angering someone powerful could have life-altering consequences. Over time, This culture of fear weakened trust between people and eroded the sense of fairness that normally supports stable communities. When power operates without limits, the difference between justice and personal revenge becomes blurred, and the institutions that are supposed to protect citizens can instead become instruments of intimidation and coercion. Extreme injustice and prolonged trauma can deeply affect the human mind, sometimes transforming a person in ways that even they might not have imagined before experiencing suffering. When someone is exposed to humiliation, loss of freedom, physical hardship, and constant fear for a long period of time, their emotional and psychological state begins to change. At first, a person may try to hold on to hope, believing that the suffering will eventually end or that justice will prevail. However, when that hope is repeatedly broken and replaced with cruelty or indifference, the mind begins to adapt in order to survive the environment. This adaptation can involve suppressing emotions, becoming emotionally distant, or developing an intense sense of anger and resentment toward those responsible for the suffering. The human mind has a powerful instinct for survival, and in extreme situations, it may reshape a person's values, priorities, and behavior. A person who once lived a quiet or ordinary life may gradually develop a much harder perspective on the world. Instead of trusting others easily, they may become suspicious and guarded. Experiences of injustice can create a deep sense of betrayal, especially if the suffering was caused by those in positions of authority who were supposed to protect or uphold fairness. Over time, this emotional transformation can push individuals toward thoughts of resistance or revenge, particularly if they feel that the system that harmed them will never face consequences. Trauma can also sharpen a person's determination. Some individuals respond to hardship by developing extraordinary patience and resilience. They may begin to observe the world around them more carefully, thinking strategically about how to survive or reclaim a sense of control over their lives. The experience of extreme suffering can therefore become a turning point in a person's identity, reshaping their motivations and actions in ways that reflect the depth of the pain they endured. Acts of resistance are often imagined as dramatic uprisings, public protests, or armed rebellions. However, resistance can also take quieter and less visible forms, especially in societies where open defiance carries severe consequences. In environments where people are constantly watched, controlled, or threatened by powerful institutions, many individuals learn that survival depends on subtlety rather than open confrontation. Under such conditions, resistance may happen quietly through small, calculated actions that challenge authority without immediately drawing attention. These acts might seem insignificant on the surface, but they represent an important way for people to preserve their dignity and personal autonomy when their freedoms are restricted. Invisible resistance often requires patience and careful planning. People who feel wronged or oppressed may choose to wait for the right moment rather than reacting immediately. This patience can be a form of strength because it allows individuals to observe their surroundings, understand the behavior of those around them, and identify opportunities where they can act without being easily detected. Unlike public acts of defiance, which can provoke swift punishment, quiet resistance operates beneath the surface of everyday life. It can be hidden within ordinary routines, everyday conversations, or simple choices that appear harmless but carry deeper meaning for the person involved. Another important aspect of invisible resistance is the psychological element. Even when a person cannot openly challenge authority, the act of quietly refusing to surrender their sense of identity or justice can help them maintain inner strength. This type of resistance becomes a way to reclaim control over one's life in situations where external control is overwhelming. The person may appear outwardly compliant while internally holding on to their own beliefs, memories, and intentions. Over time, these hidden acts of defiance can shape outcomes in unexpected ways, demonstrating that resistance does not always have to be loud or visible to have a lasting impact. Revenge and justice are often confused with one another, especially in situations where someone has suffered deeply and feels that the system meant to protect them has failed. Justice is generally understood as a fair and lawful response to wrongdoing, guided by rules, evidence, and impartial judgment. Revenge, however, is driven primarily by personal emotions such as anger, grief, humiliation, or a desire to restore lost dignity. When a person experiences severe injustice, particularly in environments where legal institutions are corrupt or controlled by powerful individuals, the idea of formal justice can begin to feel unreachable. In those moments, revenge may appear to some as the only remaining path to regain a sense of balance or control. The moral complexity arises because human suffering naturally creates strong emotional reactions. A person who has endured cruelty, imprisonment, betrayal, or the loss of loved ones may feel an overwhelming need for accountability. If those responsible remain protected by authority or escape punishment entirely, the injured person may believe that the world itself has become unfair. This emotional state can gradually reshape how they view right and wrong. Actions that once seemed unthinkable may start to feel justified in their mind because they see them as a response to earlier harm rather than as independent wrongdoing. However, revenge rarely brings the clear resolution that people imagine. While it may temporarily satisfy the desire for retaliation, it also creates new consequences, new victims, and new moral questions. Society often struggles with these situations because it must balance understanding the pain that led to the act with recognizing that harming others continues the cycle of violence. The story of someone seeking revenge therefore forces observers to confront difficult ethical questions about responsibility, suffering, and whether extreme injustice can ever truly justify extreme retaliation. Periods of intense political repression create an atmosphere where fear becomes a powerful tool of control over society. When a government or authority relies heavily on surveillance, harsh punishments, and strict loyalty to maintain power, people begin to live with a constant sense of uncertainty. In such an environment, individuals may feel that their safety depends not only on following the law, but also on avoiding any behavior that might be interpreted as suspicious or disloyal. Everyday actions, such as expressing opinions, questioning decisions, or refusing a demand from someone powerful, can suddenly carry severe consequences. This fear does not only affect those who openly challenge authority. It spreads throughout the entire population, shaping how people think, speak, and interact with one another. One of the most effective aspects of this system of control is unpredictability. When arrests, accusations, or punishments appear sudden or unexplained, people struggle to understand what is truly safe and what is dangerous. This uncertainty encourages individuals to censor themselves and avoid risks. People may stop sharing their true opinions even with friends or family members, worrying that a careless word could lead to trouble. Over time, trust between members of society begins to weaken because everyone becomes cautious about who might report them or misunderstand their actions. This atmosphere of fear also affects decision-making and personal courage. Many people may disagree privately with those in power, but feel unable to resist because the potential cost is too high. Jobs, reputations, families, and personal freedom can all be threatened by even small acts of defiance. As a result, obedience becomes the safer choice for survival. The culture of fear slowly shapes society into one where silence replaces open discussion and conformity replaces independent thought, reinforcing the power of those who control the system.